based on what is today. When I was a kid, one thing that I was told again and again was, if you want to understand something, learn something, prepare notes. And as you're reading, as you're learning, prepare notes. And then as we grew a little bigger, then we started to come to the understanding of a concept called group studies. Let's study together. Right? I've understood something, let me try and explain it to you. You have understood something, try and explain it to me. In that way, our understanding gets solidified. Once you have spoken about it and explained it to somebody, then you will remember it yourself also, right? So today is a very special day, and with the mercy of all the assembled Vaishnavas over here, I'll try and talk about a very great personality. And this is like a group study, where you've done a study, you've prepared a notes, but you're trying to do a real discussion in order to be able to get into the depths, to be able to understand the topic. Does anybody know what is today? This is the disappearance day of Srila Vrindavana Thakur. So, Srila Prabhupada has very mercifully given us Chaitanya Charitamrita, and we will be referring to Chaitanya Charitamrita, the verses and the purport, to be able to try and little bit understand about Srila Vrindavana Thakur and associated philosophy with respect to all of those things. So that's going to be an attempt that I'm going to make. At the end, you can tell me if I did okay or not. So, let's first understand a very basic principle. When we say appearance and disappearance, what does that even mean? Right? We talk about birth, death, and then we talk about appearance, disappearance in a similar breath. But what is the difference? We need to understand that and establish that first before we go into talking about the appearance or disappearance of an acharya. Right? So there's a very good analogy that Srila Prabhupada gives us, right? Which helps us understand this concept about appearance and disappearance, which may apply to, the analogy is given in the context of appearance and disappearance of the Lord, but it applies to great Vaishnavas like Srila Vrindavana Thakur also. But the analogy given is when we see the sun rise in the morning, we don't say the sun has taken birth now. Or when the sun sets in the evening, we don't say the sun has died. One who is intelligent enough to understand that the presence of sun is always there. But at certain moment of time, we are able to see, and there is another moment of time when we are stopping to see them. So that is appearance and disappearance versus birth and death, in a sense, right? Let's go a little deeper. When we say birth and death, the birth is for a living entity, a jiva, who is being forced into a body. There is an aspect of force. Versus for an appearance, there is no force. They are coming in by their own will. They have a mission. They have a purpose that they are trying to solve, and they come because of that. What difference does that make? When we say birth, the soul is forced into a type of body, and when you are forced, so you are supposed to act as per that body, go by the rules of that body, and suffer the consequences of your actions in that body. Basically, you are conditioned, is the word that Srila Prabhupada uses. Conditioning means that you are now identifying yourself in the body, and you will act as per that, and you will keep thinking, I am this body. That is birth. Versus appearance, where such great acharyas, or the Lord himself, they do not diminish in their quality, or their knowledge, or in any aspect, they are still the same. And with that same potency, with that same glories of theirs, they appear in front of us for the mission that they are having. In the same way comes death. For a conditioned soul, for a living entity, death would mean the end of the body, and now you are forced into another body based on your desires, based on your activities that you have been performing. On the other hand, a disappearance is just like saying, all right, Prabhu, you were doing Vrindavana playing, now you're doing Guru Puja, now you do something else. A disappearance is just a change of scene of saying what you're going to do next. Saying, I've done one service that you had told me to do, now I'm moving to another one. The disappearance is not a forced activity. You have to understand this basic subtle difference. Birth and death are forced activity. We don't want to die, but we are dragged out of the body and taken into another one. We go through this entire cycle of the journey of going from one body to another. Versus disappearance, there is nothing like that. It's just like, okay, I'm sitting here versus I'm sitting there. That is the fundamental difference. The fundamental difference is on the level of consciousness. And in that context, there's one lecture that I heard, it's been a while, but it's an important aspect to be understood also is, now when we're saying appearance day, we kind of start equating that to, devotee birthday equals appearance day, right? Which in one sense would be right, but then if we do not understand the gravity of appearance versus birth, then what we end up doing is, every devotee that we see on their birthday will say happy appearance day, instead of saying happy birthday. Then there was this clarification that came in that that's not the right attitude. We are still conditioned, we have to understand and realize the position in comparison to our acharyas. So in acharyas, we will say appearance and disappearance. For ourselves, we continue to say birth and death, because we are still not at that position where we are at the levels of acharyas, where we are exemplary in respect to being able to show how you have to be fully dedicated to Krishna, And in that exemplary behavior, you're actually beyond birth and death. We are in the phase. We started a journey, no doubt. The process that Srila Prabhupada has given us is taking us there, but we are in journey, we have not reached there. And we should not, and that's the reason why the clarification had come in and saying, let's not start saying happy appearance day to all the devotees, let's understand that there is a difference, there's a benchmark that has to be crossed. And that benchmark is, are you conditioned or not? Have you completely surrendered? Right? So, fine, all the beautiful words, we're saying, all right, difference between birth and death and everything, but then what is this point of, we say, okay, it's your birthday, we celebrate the fact that, oh, you came, this is happy, good news. Do we ever celebrate anybody's death? Mostly not, with a few exceptions that might be there, but mostly we don't celebrate, because we celebrating somebody's death might sound like we're saying, I'm happy the person is gone, he's troubled us so much. But that's not the case. We're celebrating the disappearance day of an Acharya. Why is that being celebrated? That celebration comes in because their birth and their death, or their appearance and their disappearance, is not on the same level as us. It's a celebration saying, oh, glorious example set in front of us, and that glorious example needs to be followed. And wow, one service done, going to another one. In that way, it is celebrated. Right? There's a very beautiful story that Srila Prabhupada gives to really help us understand what living and what dying would actually mean, and what it means in the context of who the person is. Let me know if you have heard this story before or not. Right? So Srila Prabhupada gives an example of a sage. The sage is going around and he meets different people. In particular, there are 4 different people that the sage meets. And depending on who the person is, the blessings given to that particular person is different. How many of you have heard this story? Yeah, okay. So Srila Prabhupada gives this story multiple times. So the sage basically first is going, and first tell the blessings, and then we go into the detailed explanation that Srila Prabhupada gives. It really helps us set the context very well. So the first person that the sage goes and meets is the Rajputra, which means the son of the king, the prince. To him, in Sanskrit, the sage gives the blessings and says, Chiram Jiva. What that means is that you live forever. Very likely blessings are coming from the sage, like, you know what, we also, our elders would also bless us in that particular way, be happy, stay forever, be healthy, live forever, and so on. Right? So it makes sense. All right. The people listening to the sage's blessing did not react too much because they are accustomed to it. The next, the sage is coming and encountering Kasai, a butcher. To him he says, Najiva Namara. He says, for you, there's no difference. You neither live nor die. There's no difference if you're living or dying. That's a little odd. Okay? Let's absorb. Maybe the sage has something intelligent to talk about. Then he goes and meets a Muni Putra, a son of a sage himself. To him says, Najiva. The blessing says, Najiva, don't take a birth. Okay? You see how these things are changing? And finally, he meets a sadhu, a devotee. To him says, Jiva va mara va. Which means that for you, living or dying is the same thing. So whatever is happening, it's okay, fine. Not good. This is practically I'm saying what maintains status quo, no changes. Now, to these blessings, Srila Prabhupada gives the explanation very beautifully. So when the prince was given the blessing, saying that you live forever, the sage understood the fact that you as the son of a king are right now in a very opulent position. You are being able to relish the good karmas that you have done in the past, and you're relishing that. But when you die, you're going to start facing the consequences of not being Krishna conscious, and all the sense gratification that you did with the resources available to you, you'll have to pay the price for that. So it is best for you to keep living and enjoying this relishment of material success till when it lasts, because after that, it's darkness for you. So I want that happiness for you to be prolonged as much as possible. Versus the butcher, when he was said that for you both birth and death are the same thing, is because you are being so sinful now. That your sinful activities, you will end up seeing reactions of that now also. And your next birth coming in after you leave this body is even more dark. So no matter if you live or die, basically you are in darkness. You are in the mode of ignorance. There is nothing that can be done till when you don't change your consciousness over. The son of a sage, the Muniputra, the blessing was given us that you won't live anymore, right? This is Najiva, that enough. That is because the son of a sage has been trained well in order to be able to control their senses in the science of Krishna consciousness. He says there is no more point for you to live and suffer in this material world, because when you die, you're only going to get better going towards Krishna. Even if you don't reach the full success, you're still at least going to go into much better position situated for your Krishna consciousness than it is now. So it's best for you to die right now and elevate yourself and continue your journey towards Krishna. So don't live. That's the blessing here. Versus a sadhu, a devotee, where it says your live or die is the same. It's unlike the one blessing given to the Kasai, or the butcher, because in case of a devotee, they are fully surrendered to Krishna. No matter where they are, in what position they are in, they are always serving Krishna. They are always under the protection of Krishna. So now if you live or you die, that makes no difference, because birth or death for the devotee is just a change of service. So it says, makes no difference. So from the story that Srila Prabhupada gives us, we are able to understand how our actions, our consciousness the birth and death means different things for us, and by that it means it reflects to what is going to happen next. For somebody, death could be the most painful experience. For others, it might not make any difference. So when we talk about our acharyas, the recipients days of the day of our acharyas, we are kind of celebrating it in the context that oh, they've moved on to a different service, setting up an example for us to be able to follow. We've heard of the art of living. Srimad Bhagavatam is the art of dying. And the acharyas have actually shown us how this is supposed to be done. We celebrate that example. Okay? So, coming to the recipients of Srila Vrindavana Thakur, right? So, who was he? I'm going to give a couple of very quick facts to what the different purports is, and then we'll dive a little deeper into what it means. So, Srila Vrindavana Thakur appeared on Krishna Dwadashi of the month of Vaishakha in 1428 of the Shaka era, which approximates to around 1507 AD. That is when he appeared. His father's name was Vaikuntanath Vipra, and this is where it gets very nice and interesting. He is the son, the mother's name is Narayan Dev. We'll talk about her in a second. He is an eternal associate of Gaura Leela, and he is a direct disciple of Nityananda. That is kind of the quick bullet points. But there is a beautiful verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita which describes his actual positioning very well. Right? In the Adi Leela 1155, it is said that Srila Vyasadeva described the pastimes of Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam. The Vyasa of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was Vrindavana Das. So his position is the same as of Vyasadeva. And there's more that I'll talk about that in a second. But like Krishna Leela is given to us by Vyasadeva, and he's the authoritative person to give us that Leela, for understanding Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela and being able to absorb ourselves in it, the Acharya for us whose blessings we have actually received is Vrindavana Das. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport explains this, and that is where we'll understand its very nice position. The Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur was an incarnation of Vyasadeva, and also a friendly cowherd boy named Kusuma Pita in Krishna Leela. So in Krishna Leela, he was one of the cowherd boys, and he is also an incarnation of Vyasadeva. Further, Srila Prabhupada explains in that way is, in the other words, the author of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavata, Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur, the son of Srivas Thakur's niece, Narayani. So Narayani, the mother, is the niece of Srivas Thakur, and there is more that I'll explain that in a second, was a combined incarnation of Vedas and the cowherd boy of Kusumapiri. That's his position. So he's in Krishna Leela, he's also Vedas, and now he's coming in to be able to deliver Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela to us. One thing which is important now, where I'm taking a little segue, is understanding a little philosophical concept which is important here. When we hear something about, oh, there was something that the person was doing before, and then we say in the next life they've come in and done greater and better, we always keep referring to this Bhagavad Gita verse of 641, which talks about unsuccessful yogis after many, many years of enjoyment of the planets of pious living entities is born in the family of righteous people or in the family of rich aristocrats. And we take examples of devotees like Bharat Maharaj, for example. Bharat Maharaj lived his entire life of devotion, died while having a little attachment for a year, then came back again as Jada Bharat. And also we see examples like, of attaining that position through sadhana, for example, Narad Muni. Again, the son of a servant who served the sages, who through that came up to the point of next life taking the position of being a Narad Muni. So when we're looking at all of these examples, we have to understand and remember that these are sadhaka siddhas, who over the period of time, so when you talk about previous birth and the next birth you did this, we always try and understand things in the context of unsuccessful yogi taking birth again to become successful through the process of sadhana, which is what is called as sadhana bhakti. Or such people who have received the siddhi, the perfection through this process, is called sadhaka siddhi. Now, in the context of Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur, we have to understand this does not apply. These devotees, these acharyas, are what are called as nitya siddhas. Nitya means eternally perfect. When somebody is in Krishna Leela, right, they're already at the level of perfection. We cannot equate them to, say, for example, Bharat Maharaj, where the end of the life, the goal was not met, the next life is a continuation in a journey to attain that perfection. Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur was in Krishna Leela. He's already perfect. He's just coming in, and that is where the term now appearance comes in, is because they don't need to come. They're not forced to come. But they're coming in order to achieve a particular service. In this case, he's coming in to give us the Chaitanya Leela. He had no other reason to come but to give us that mercy. Right? So in these ways, you can kind of see and understand how association with these Nitya Siddhas, direct or indirect association of these Nitya Siddhas, helps us to get faith to be able to do our sadhana so that we can come to the point of being sadhaka siddhas. to come to the same level of perfection through the process of our sadhana by looking at what the teachings are of a Nitya Siddha, because they eternally know how some things are supposed to be done. Let me take an example of how this works. And this is a very beautiful example given in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. In the purport, it has been explained. This is about the gopis and their categorization in a sense. And this is in the context of Krishna is in the forest playing his flute, inviting everybody for the Rasa. The first category of the gopis is the Nitya Siddha gopis, who have eternally have been in Krishna Leela. So these gopis obviously have no hindrance in going and in going and joining Krishna in his Leelas. They are free to go. No restrictions, they just go. Then there are these set of gopis who are not Nitya Siddhas, but they have been serving the Nitya Siddha gopis in order to serve Radharani, in order to serve Krishna. I can understand the parampara of how the services reach Krishna. These Sadhaka Siddha gopis had perfected the art of assisting the Nitya Siddha gopis to assist Radharani to serve Krishna. Such Sadhaka Siddha gopis also had no restrictions in being able to reach Krishna. They also went and became a part of his Leela. Then there were next set of gopis who were also sadhakis, like they were also doing sadhana, but their sadhana had not reached that particular level. They were stopped by their family. They could not go to Krishna. But their sadhana was so strong at that moment of time, through association of the Sadhaka Siddha gopis, their sadhana was so strong enough that when they were stopped from going and seeing Krishna in the forest, the feeling of separation was so strong that it burned any remaining anarthas that was there, and they purified themselves and left the body and reached Krishna. So you see, Nitya Siddhas, and there is Sadhaka Siddhas, and then there are who are sadhakis or who are doing the sadhana, but because of association of Sadhaka Siddha bhaktis, gopis, they were able to reach the same destination. Then the final were those gopis who could not join the Leela, but their feeling of separation was not that burning to be able to burn all their anarthas. They continued in their bodies while associating with the other gopis, still getting trained, ultimately down the line through the process of sadhana, coming to the level of Sadhaka Siddha. So all of these acharyas are Nitya Siddhas. Either direct association with them or indirect association through their teachings, or we will see that verse also, association with these Nitya Siddhas through the Sadhaka Siddhas who have associated with them also leads us to the same destination. That's the process of induction of Krishna's mercy. That's how we receive it. So through this process of what we are seeing of Srila Vrindavana Thakur of being the Nitya Siddha, whatever we are getting through him is what we are supposed to be imbibing in our life. That is the path that we are supposed to be taking. Now let's understand a little more of how these acharyas through their example are teaching us. How did Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur get to the level of getting that mercy of being where he is, and how did all of these things happen? So that explanation is given in Adi Leela as 8th chapter, 41st verse. I'll read 2 verse, and then I'll tell the purport where Srila Prabhupada gives out the secret for us. He says Narayani, remember Narayani is the mother of Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur. Narayani eternally eats the remittances of the food of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur was born of her womb. That is the qualification. Eat, and that became the qualification to get the mercy of having Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur as the son. Being able to eat, Krishna Prasad, being able to come to that level of being able to take the remittances directly from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's plate. Wow. And how did that become possible? Let's see, Srila Prabhupada gives that in the purport. In the purport, he is saying in the verse 43 of Gauradesha Deepika, a book written by Kavi Karanapurna, that describes all the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and who they previously were. There is this following statement regarding Narayana. Hear this one. This is going to blow my mind. When Lord Krishna was a child, he was nursed by a woman named Ambika. Krishna Leela, again, everything is getting associated with it. When Lord Krishna was a child, he was nursed by a woman called Ambika, who had a younger sister, Kilimbika. During the time of Lord Chaitanya's incarnation, the same Kilimbika used to eat the remittances of food left by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That Kilimbika was Narayani, who was the niece of Shiva Thakur. Later on, when she grew up and married, Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur was born from her womb. And this is where Srila Prabhupada now gives a very profound statement. We'll come to that in a second. A devotee of Lord Krishna is celebrated in terms of devotional service rendered to the Lord. Thus we know Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur as the son of Narayani. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur notes in this connection that there is no reference to his parental ancestry because there is no need to understand that. So we see how Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur is very blessed to be the son of Narayani. But Narayani is blessed because she had the association of her sister who was nursing Krishna. Again, the same concept comes in. One who is nursing Krishna in Krishna Lila is Nitya Siddha. Through a direct or indirect association of a Nitya Siddha, the perfection stage of being able to be part of Krishna Lila or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Lila is what is being achieved. Now, in this, what I emphasized on was the statement that Srila Prabhupada makes. It says, a devotee of Lord Krishna is celebrated in terms of devotional service rendered to the Lord. That brings us back to celebrating appearance and disappearance of these devotees is because we are celebrating the service that they have rendered to the Lord. Right? So we have to understand from this Leela that we just read about Kilimbika, that everything is starting from one aspect. And that is what we need to understand and try and imbibe, all of us. That aspect is that our qualification to progress in Krishna consciousness is coming from a service attitude. Till when we don't have an attitude to serve, there is no chance we'll have any realization, there is no chance we'll be able to do any progress in Krishna consciousness. So in this example, now think about this, when the service is being done by the elder sister Ambika, by serving Krishna, it's a service being done. Now it does not say over here, and as we read, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur saying that there's a lot which is not needed to be known. Right? But imagine one sister doing direct service to Krishna, will that desire not come in the heart of the other sister? It will, right? So somewhere that desire to serve came in from there, it comes in that she comes in as Narayani and Srila Vrindavana Thakur is coming at the side. It all starts from the service attitude. When, even as Narayani, do you think when she's able to honor the remittances of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Mahaprasadam, that's coming in just by without doing any service? That opportunity, can it ever come? Have we ever been in association of any of a senior devotee within ISKCON as a movement also? How many of us have got the opportunity to get Maha from their plate? You have, right? Did you get it just by staying at home and relaxing? You had to be there, serving them from morning to evening, cooking for them, doing something, serving it with love to them. At the end, they will mercifully leave something in the plate for you to be able to honor it. Otherwise, that opportunity does not come. Even if Narayani, she's being able to get the remittances of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Mahaprasad, that is obviously a reciprocation for the service she's rendering. Otherwise, it's not possible. So that attitude to always serve needs to be there. There's another example in which you see a similar situation. We talked of that example. Naradu, right? The mother, the son, both of them are serving the sage. Same concept. The service is being done with so much of love and affection that they feel obliged to leave some remittances for their benefit. Otherwise, if you observe very carefully, for those who have ever served a senior Vaishnava, they do not leave anything. They literally scrape out everything and leak out because it is not a right for us to get that remittance. We have to earn it. And that earning is coming in through the service attitude. Now, what is stopping us to come to that service attitude is also shown in all of these leelas. It's our ego. When you say you have to serve somebody, then you have to be submissive to them. You cannot serve somebody without being submissive to them, right? How can I be submissive? Submissive means I'm not as great as you are, but I am great. It is this ego, this attitude of ours, which constantly brings us down. If we are not being able to come to the attitude of that service by being submissive, that is, then the chain does not start. No submissive behavior, no service, no opportunity to progress in any ways. That's the essence. So that is why that humbleness that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always talks about is for that. What is my position? Srila Prabhupada says is to fake it till you make it. Yeah, sure, there is ego in there. I don't come to that realization, to that state. Fake it. I don't do anything. I can't do anything, but you still do it. That's the point. Humility, the real humility means saying, I don't know, please watch me that I don't do wrong. Humility is not, I don't know anything, please Prabhu, you do it. That's not humility. That's ego. That is what is stopping us to come to that point. Right? We always have to have that attitude of trying to learn. So, again, all of these things is coming in from the bodily consciousness, identifying ourselves with the body. And this Maya, especially, it's her service to attack us with these different conceptions to try and get us away from the service attitude. Let's take an example, right? And then I'll explain that how a Vedic culture kind of addresses that. When we talk of somebody, some devotee in, say, for a female body, just as an example, right? We says, oh, what you're supposed to be doing service like this, you're allowed to do this, what is you're not allowed to do that? I'm supposed to be in the kitchen only. That attitude might come in because of bodily consciousness. If we see the thing, you're not the body, you're the instrument that is just being an instrument. And the use of that instrument, irrespective of the type of instrument, applies to both. That submissive attitude needs to be there in the male body devotees also. Do we have examples to prove that? Yes, we do. When Krishna himself is receiving Sudama, or for that matter, any other Leela from Srimad Bhagavatam that we read, where these devotees are receiving a sage, what do they say? Come sit. No, look at the attitude. That submissive attitude is a quality of the soul, irrespective of the type of the body. The body's identity is what starts creating these conceptions because of which Maya is enabling us not to surrender. We have to win over that. And that can be won only in the aspect of by getting that knowledge and that realization that we are not just. And this attack by Maya comes in indiscriminately for everybody. Very latest incident. Second grade girl going to school. 8 years old, second grade girl going to school. She's been challenged by saying, a classmate is challenging, saying, you say you don't eat meat, you're a vegetarian, because you have this conception that you're hurting somebody. But when you're eating vegetables, you're hurting the plants also. Now, if you're not strong with the concept of why we are doing it, through the process of constant sadhana of reading and associating with devotees, to the process of questioning again and again the acharyas, the gurus, that Pariprashna Sevya, if you're not doing that, then that strong faith will not be there. And in such attack mode, you'll start shaking and you might fall down. So that is why it all starts with books are the basis. Because when we are reading, even when we are chanting, all of these things are nothing but to bring us to that attitude of being submissive and to bring us to the service. Because books gives us the knowledge, gives us the facts. Chanting is that begging and praying to come into that consciousness to be able to serve and asking for service. All of these things are the precursors to create that platform on top of which our service can come and sit. But if we don't do that, then we don't have a place for service to come in. Right? So, towards the final end of talking about Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur, I have a few other things talking about his work also. Him giving us the Chaitanya Leela. So when you look at the Adi Leela, the chapter 8, when you're looking at, especially on Vedabase side, they give a very beautiful summary on the chapter. So from there I'm reading it out, and let's understand what he's given us. Previous to the composition of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur wrote a book called Chaitanya Bhagavata. Only those chapters which were not discussed by Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur in Chaitanya Bhagavata has been taken up by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami to be depicted in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So there was a book that is given before, Chaitanya Charitamrita King, which describes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leelas in a very detailed manner, and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami continues from there to what we receive as Chaitanya Charitamrita via Srila Prabhupada. Right? So there is this verse about why this was being done. There are a few verses, I'm going to quickly read the translation of that. It says, Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur has written Sri Chaitanya Mangal. Now you will see the difference. We first said he wrote Chaitanya Bhagavata, and now we are saying he's writing Chaitanya Mangal. That is going to be explained by Srila Prabhupada in a minute. And therein described in all respects the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. He first summarized all the pastimes of the Lord and later described them vividly in detail. The pastimes of Lord Chaitanya are unlimited and unfathomable. Therefore, in describing all those pastimes, the book becomes voluminous. He saw them to be so extensive that he later felt that some had not been properly described. He statically described the pastimes of Lord Nityananda, but later the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya remained untold. The devotees of Vrindavan were all very anxious to hear those pastimes. So that gap that Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur, I would assume, purposely left for Krishnadas Kaviraj to fill in is what has been filled and given to us as Chaitanya. Right? Now, this conflict of the book name, I'll just quickly read Srila Prabhupada's purport also to explain what that means is. Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur's Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat was originally entitled Sri Chaitanya Mangal. But when Srila Lochana Das Thakur later wrote another book called Sri Chaitanya Mangala, Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur changed the name of his own book, which is now later known as Sri Chaitanya Bhagavata. The life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very elaborately described in Chaitanya Bhagavata, and Krishnaraj Kaviraj Goswami has already informed us in his Chaitanya Charitamrita. He has described whatever Vrindavana Das Thakur has not mentioned. This acceptance of Chaitanya Bhagavata by Krishnaraj Kaviraj Goswami indicates his acceptance of disciplic succession. A writer of transcendental literature never tries to surpass the previous acharyas. This is a very important aspect, and we'll dwell on that. Right? So let me just also quickly read out this quote where it very clearly says his position. He says, Vrindavana Das Thakur is Lord Nityananda's favorite devotee, and therefore he is the original Vyasadeva in describing the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is Anta Leela 2082. Right? So one of the things that we very clearly read, right? It is important for us to understand is Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur is giving us Sri Chaitanya Mangal. But coming in the disciplic succession, Krishnaraj Kaviraj Goswami, when he is writing Chaitanya Charitamrita, he is not surpassing the previous acharya. That means is whatever was described, he's just saying, it's kind of, this is what has been already described, so I'm not describing that, go refer to that book, but I'm describing only what is missing. Srila Prabhupada also very beautifully has given us what the previous acharyas has given us. But there is a very important thumb rule, which you have to understand always, is not to surpass, not to jump over the head of a previous acharya. What that means? That means is, the way it has been explained to me by my Guru Maharaj is, you are not going and reading any book of previous acharyas till when you have fully read and understood Srila Prabhupada's book. So which means, like, again, when I read all of these amazing descriptions, it is very beautiful verse in 88:35, which says, Thakur Vrindavana Das has composed Sri Chaitanya Mangala. Hearing this book annihilates all misfortune. Oh, I want to read this book, I want to read this book. But we should not jump over Srila Prabhupada, jump over Krishna Chaitanya Goswami, directly to go to Srila Vrindavana Das Thakur, say, please explain, say, hey, you're supposed to be coming in through the path of disciplined succession. First, understand what your Guru has told. Then understand what their Guru has told. Then come to the step over. You don't escalate, like even when you're working, right? You don't directly go and escalate to a senior director, VP level people. You go through manager, senior manager. That's how you escalate. The same principle also applies when it comes to our following of the disciplined succession. We have to fully surrender, serve our Guru, follow their instructions, which in my case is to read all Srila Prabhupada's books completely nicely, understanding them before I touch any other book. Your instructions might be different, but that's my instruction, right? So what that basically means is, we should not ignore what Srila Prabhupada has given us. It also means in the perspective of we following disciplined succession in not trying to create something on our own and creating a new method. There can be a different presentation of the thing based on time, place, and circumstances. For example, Srila Prabhupada never used PowerPoint slides, but devotees use it. Srila Prabhupada did not have Zoom sessions. The essence of the philosophy is where we are talking about, that it should not be changed. Because that is the parampara system given us, and it has been preserved for so many years through the parampara system that preservation should be maintained. What it also means is not to jump over the previous acharya. It also means, is how it's been explained to me, is you have to be ready to carry on the baton that has been passed on. Which means you cannot just sit back and relax. The previous acharyas have done an amazing effort in order to retain this knowledge with full purity and showing exactly being an acharya of how it has to be executed with full purity. If we have been merciful enough, they've been merciful enough to attach us to that disciplined succession, it becomes our duty. It becomes our duty now to become qualified like them and continue the parampara. Because if you're not doing that, then we are being somebody who's got something but you're not cared for it. We're kind of undervalued what we have received. So when it is very clearly being said over here that Krishna Chaitanya Goswami did not surpass the previous acharya, there's multiple interpretations to that. One, you're not trying to undermine the work previously. You're only enriching that with your own work after fully understanding. It also means we have to continue on following what is being taught as is and not manipulate. It also means that we have to continue on the same effort, and the previous acharyas have left certain aspect of the service of world deliverance because they wanted to engage us in the service. Otherwise, Srila Prabhupada single-handedly could have done it. Or any of the previous acharyas. They did not. Because they very mercifully are leaving some things for us. So today, rolling back to the topic would be, today on the day of disappearance of Srila Vrindavana, we have to humbly beg and pray that we are able to follow this entire lineage to the same level of dedication and purity as they have previously done. We have to pray to Srila Vrindavana Thakur that this Chaitanya Charitamrita that has come to us, we first get the intelligence enough to pick it up, and then get the intelligence enough to be able to understand it, and then get the intelligence enough to be able to not just read and understand it, but actually change our lifestyle in order to imbibe the teachings of that. That should be our prayers. So today when the darshan opens, and we see our entire Guru Parampara at the bottom, that is the prayer. Let's make that. Not just for ourselves, but for the entire congregation. Because without the blessings of the Vaishnavas, there is no way any foolish person like me can even achieve to be able to come to the level of making that prayer. So that was the topic of the day. I did have a few quick quotes again. If you have 2 minutes, I can read about that. It talks about things like Srila Vrindavana Thakur was personally selected basically to say that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is speaking through him. So when we read the books that he's given, it's practically reading Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's words directly. There is no difference. When the Acharya is fully transparent, it comes in completely to us. When we read his books, we are fully listening to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So again, this Adi Lila 836 purport, I'm just going to read that last and stop for any questions. Okay? In this purport, Srila Prabhupada says, Srila Rupa Goswami has said, devotional service to the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic literature the Upanishads, Puranas, Narada Pancharath, etc., is simply an unnecessary disturbance in society. Due to misunderstanding of Srimad Bhagavatam, people are misled regarding the science of Krishna. However, by reading Srila Vrindavana Thakur's book, one can very easily understand this science. This applies basically for us in the context of Chaitanya Charitamrita also. That even if we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, we still have the possibility of misunderstanding the science of Krishna. When you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, you come to the level of understanding that now there's going to be no doubt. Reading with full concentration. I'm going to stop over there for any questions, comments, and realization. A humble request towards the end, right? Would also be again today, like all the other auspicious days in that perspective, take an opportunity, see if you want to pick up a box of Chaitanya Charitamrita today. The only purpose of these Sunday feasts, talks, etc., is only for us to get motivated enough to pick up Srila Prabhupada. Because no matter how much an expert a speaker would be, like not unqualified like me, but in an hour there's only a limited that can be told. I've tried to pick up a few excerpts from Chaitanya Charitamrita, but the amount of full nectar that exists in that full set of book is irreplaceable. So dive in that ocean, and hopefully it helps everybody out. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada, please.